Hey, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, what we're going to look at is how we can actually use color in SwiftUI. So let's jump straight into the video. So when working on color in SwiftUI, I think one thing that's really important for you to understand is that color is just like any other view. So for example, we could actually use color to set the whole background of this screen and overlay some text on top of it. So let's see how we can use that and do that now. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is the text that we have on the screen here, we're just going to embed this within a Z stack. If you hold down text and then choose embed in Z stack, it should be within a Z stack. Now, you won't see any effect with this because what a Z stack is it's just, the best way to think about it is it's just a stack that allows you to basically put views on top of each other, kind of like a stack of cards. So what we're going to do within our Z stack though is we're going to add a color above our text. So you'll see our text will now be overlaid on top of our color. So let's just type this in now. And as you can see now, our color fills almost the whole screen, and our text is now on top of our color.red because, like I said before, the best way to think of Z stack is almost like you have a stack of cards. But like I said before, because color is essentially just a view like any other view, we can actually apply modifiers directly onto color. So right now, color is not filling the whole screen. And the reason why that is because it's actually only laying it out in proportion to the safe area layouts. So when you're working with iPhone devices, specifically ones with notches, they have a safe area layout, as you can see here. So this white bit here and this white bit here is the safe area. We're not able to fill by default. So if we want to fill this area and this area, all we need to do is apply a modifier onto our color to ignore the safe area. So let's do that now. And as you can see now, our color fills the whole screen because we've told it to ignore the entire safe area. So the next thing I want to do is I just want to discuss how we can actually work with using colors in SwiftUI, so the different ways we can actually create a color. So what we're going to do is look at the Apple documentation in Xcode to view the different ways we can create a color. So in Xcode, if you go to your toolbar at the top, and if you just click on Window and then Developer Documentation, this should open up the Apple documentation for you. And at the top, because I've already done this, but at the top, if you actually search for color, like so, you have to type it in the American way. So if you search for color, you should see it suggested here that you see a representation of a color, and then if you just click on it, it should load up this screen for you here. So when you're on this screen, you can actually read all the different ways of how you can actually create a color view, like so. And it also shows examples as well. But what I want to do is I want to just scroll down to the different ways that we can actually create a color. So we just scroll down to the bottom here. So the first way we can do it is we can actually specify an asset name. And I actually went through this in more detail in my previous video, how to manage colors in Xcode, which you should check out. But let's actually see how we can use this initializer to create a color. So we just go back to our previous example from before. Let's now just remove this .red, and instead of using .red, I'm just going to type in a color called secondary, like so. So if I actually go to my assets catalog, you'll notice that I actually have a folder here called colors, and I already have this color here called secondary. So it's actually referencing the color here. And as you can see, my color in any appearance is black, but specifically in dark mode, I've said that I want the color to be white, which is why when you go to the SwiftUI preview on my screen, it looks like this. So if we want to make the text just look a bit more visible, we can actually apply a foreground color of white, or actually let's use an accent color that we defined. So now you can see the accent color on our secondary color, like so. Also as well, we could actually create a color using RGB components. So RGB stands for red, green, and blue. So it's the red, green, and blue that makes up a color. So if we just go back to the Apple documentation, the one we're going to look at is using this here, where we specify the red, green, and blue of a color. There's also other ways of looking into it, but I'll let you explore that yourselves as a little challenge. So let's go back to our example, and rather than specifying secondary, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually specify a RGB. So let's delete this, and then we'll open this up. And then you should see an option that says red, green, and blue. So I'm just going to enter some values in here for the RGB that I was working with before when I was using a software design tool called Sketch. Now, when you look at this, it's white, but this is actually wrong and it's not working. And the reason why that is because when you're working with RGB colors in Swift, you're not actually able to just use the whole value. What you need to do is you actually need to divide it by the maximum on that color wheel for RGB. So the maximum in the color wheel is 255. So in order to actually see the colors when you're working with this initializer, you actually need to divide each parameter by 255. So let's do that now. You can see now our color is now visible on the screen. So our color, this color is actually the same as my accent color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment this out so you can actually see the text. So there you go. Now, the reason why you have to divide it by 255 is because the RGB value is actually specified using a number between 0 and 1. So by dividing these two values, you actually represent that within Swift. As we could actually use UIColor within SwiftUI. So if you're someone who's working with UIKit, you can actually transfer your UI colors into a SwiftUI view and let it render it as well. And also do that, we actually need to use the UIColor initializer. So back to the documentation, you'll notice that there's a UIColor one here. There's also an NS color if you're working with AppKit, and CG color if you're working with core graphics as well. But what we're going to do is just use the UIColor parameter. So let's just delete this example that we use here. And rather than specifying an RGB, we're just going to say UI color. Now, because this is using that, we need to actually use an initializer to create a UI color. So I'm just going to say dot init. And then what we can do is we can actually use any of the colors within UI color as well. So I'm just going to say mint. And as you can see, our view is now representing the mint value that we specified in here. So when comparing all the different ways of working with colors, which way would I recommend that you use? So I would actually recommend that you create all your colors within the assets catalog. So the reason why I'm saying this is because if you're someone who works purely with SwiftUI, then you can just reference your colors from the assets catalog and you also get a visual representation. And also as well, if you're someone who's actually working with UIKit, you can actually use the assets catalog as well with UIKit as well and pass in that color as a UI color if you need it as well. So it's just a lot more maintainable and easier for you to use when you're working with your applications. And you can actually use colors within modifiers. So at the start before, I actually passed in the accent color to change the color of our text. Let's just add it back in again. So now that some modifiers allow you to actually just directly pass in a color. But you actually have to use the SwiftUI color view in order for this to work. So you could either just use the enum case like so, or what I could do as well is I could actually just directly just remove this, and I could just insert a color from our library here if I wanted to, like so. As you can see now, by dragging that color into the modifier, it picks up our hello world in black. Okay, cool. So that was everything in this video. If you have any feedback, I'd really appreciate it in the comment section below. Also, as well, if you haven't already, then give the video a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, then hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can get updates whenever I release a new video. That's everything from me. I'll catch you all in a bit. Deuces.